All right. Well, welcome to the What Makes You Smile podcast. This is an introduction episode where, unlike the future ones where you'll hopefully tune in, it's just me talking. Going forward, I'm going to have the opportunity to have some friends and acquaintances and potentially some strangers and other people come in and talk to me about what are some of the things that make them smile. This is really about our evenings and weekends and the things that bring us joy beyond the 9:05 in the 5 to 9, so to speak. A large part of why I'm doing this is to serve as an antidote to some of what we see too often in the world, which is the madness, the mayhem, the anger, the complaining, the shields that we often put on ourselves to make sure that we aren't vulnerable, that we share in sort of this common rage that seems to fuel so much of social media. When I set out to do this, really all I set out to do was just to have some conversations with friends and document that. So here I am recording the first one of hopefully many after having recorded 4 episodes with some friends, and I felt it was probably a good idea to go back in time and have this conversation with you directly so that when you do hopefully start listening to the podcast as they get released over the next little while, you'll have some context as to why I'm doing it. So like I said, this is really a chance, and you'll see on the table here, I've got a Polaroid camera and a book of dad jokes. So the way this is going to work for the next however many episodes that this lasts, or that I'm able to hold my interest on this, is that, we'll do a bit of an intro, talk to them. There's going to be a dad joke or some kind of joke at the outset, just to level set that this is not serious. This is about having a good time together. We'll talk a little bit, and then the band that I play in, Steve Cord and the Remainders, is going to play a song as just sort of a musical interlude right before we then get into the question about what makes whoever I'm talking to that day smile. And those conversations about what makes people smile, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long, but all of it is really contextualized in the notion that we want to try and strip away the armor, so to speak, as I mentioned earlier, and really have, conversations as people. Set aside the phones, set aside the distractions, and just be here having, a conversation, which I think too often we forget to do. We've got something that's distracting us. We're not present. What I found after the first 4 of those conversations is that, I'm learning as I'm going, as I develop this podcast, but also that it's quite enjoyable. I think we've forgotten the art of conversation. We've forgotten the art of letting people in. We've forgotten the art of finding the light in the day that we are confronted with every time we get out of bed. So, these conversations are really about sharing those moments that make you go, hell yeah. Really about finding the joy over the anger, taking the chance to smile instead of scowling, not getting caught up in the stuff that is pulling at our pant legs too often and trying to yank us off the life raft that we're all holding to as we navigate this life. So in terms of expectations, there's no expectations. I'm hoping that you stick with me through this. I haven't made any specific commitment in terms of numbers of episodes. I'm fortunate to be able to come and utilize Neighbor Media's podcast studio here in Aurora on my evenings and on my weekends and on my days off to be able to do this thing that, is really about me and my community and my friends and my interest in sharing our stories together. So far, some of the conversations, and you'll get into these, have been amazing. They've been about, why we give, what faith means to people, what it means to be an amateur stand-up comedian and waiting for the silence as opposed to the laughter and persevering through that. Bruce Springsteen, I had my friend Jake in and we talked about our favorite Chuck Norris memes, which sadly happened to be the same day that Chuck Norris passed away. So, it's funny how those things happen, but in our minds, looking back on that conversation after we heard that was a great way for us to celebrate something that we've held in high regard throughout our lives as this action hero, sort of evolved from action hero into meme and an important part of what we see as bringing light to our conversations. And I expect that over time, these conversations are going to evolve. I'm hoping that as I have more people in that maybe I'm not as familiar with, I'll learn more about them, learn about the people that I get to sit across this table with, and talk about what makes them tick, what makes them smile, and generally speaking, what makes us us. As I've been thinking through this, there's always those things that you sort of in the back of your mind is that, is it going to be as good as some of the other podcasts that we listen to? I hope it is, but at the end of the day, I hope you take it for what it is. I often remind myself and my kids and others that comparison is the thief of joy. So regardless of what other podcasts look like, this is going to be a uniquely Daryl podcast, and it's going to be unique to what I hope to get out of it, which is why you're seeing some flavors of who I am in the structure of it. A joke, a silly dad joke or a silly joke, as well as some music, which has been such an essential part of my life for my entire life and brings me such joy and makes me smile, whether it's a song on the radio or playing with my band or just picking up a guitar and noodling around at home. So with that said, what will guide us is the Leonard Cohen quote. There's a light in there's a crack in everything. That's where the light gets in. So this, I hope, is the crack that lets the light in for you. So wherever you are, I hope you enjoy these conversations for whatever they are, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoy having them. So coming up in the next podcast, you'll have the first podcast, you'll have a chance to listen to my friend Wasim and I have a conversation, and then following that, we'll get into Mike and then Jake and then the band and then on and on and on and on and on, and for however long this goes. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for taking the time to understand what it is I'm doing, and I look forward to potentially talking to you as we discover what makes us smile.